Disoriented and hurting, a young man opened his eyes and found himself surrounded by strangers inside a futuristic hall. The noise around him crashed into his senses, and his confusion grew worse with each passing second. In front of him stretched a huge, sterile chamber packed with dozens of other lost and shaken people. The impossible sight struck him hard, and a quiet breath slipped from his mouth. With strangers on every side, his thoughts spun wildly between kidnapping and some unreal dream. Then a sharp ache stabbed through his head and pulled out a memory he had forgotten. Through the fog of pain, one important image finally returned, the strange letter he had received. His memory drifted back, revealing Yahello, a recent graduate with no job to his name. Rather than building a normal career, he survived as a pro gamer, unmatched when it came to power leveling. Win after win, he ruled the virtual world, grinding through days and nights to make money. Sitting back in his messy room, he finally gave himself a short rest after finishing the job. During that brief break, he scrolled through his phone without the slightest clue about what was coming next. A picture of a happy-looking couple on the screen reminded him of what he lacked, and that thought stirred the memory of his father's cruel words, the same reason he had moved out to live alone. He had been ready to prove himself, but he never imagined what that choice would bring. Late that night, a dark delivery man showed up with a package for Yahello. The moment he opened it, a strange dark force exploded from the mysterious letter and swallowed him in a storm of swirling blue power, exposing an admission notice to a place called Dawn Academy and starting a forced teleport, and in the next instant the energy disappeared, leaving only the letter behind. Yahello then appeared in a strange place, unable to tell whether all of this was some twisted joke. A voice broke through his confusion as a man looked down at him with a smug expression and stepped over him, making light of how long he had taken to wake up. But he was not the only one there, because the other freshmen were also panicking, yelling that they had been kidnapped, while the one holding them showed no concern for their threats. Instead, he released a frightening surge of purple energy from his sword, crushing the panic in the room with a brutal display of power. Then, with one order, he demanded absolute silence. The new student stood still as the man grumbled about the poor decisions made by the admissions department. His irritation was obvious, as he dealt with the same kind of fools every single year. The instructor's harsh words echoed through the chamber as he blamed someone for wasting their time. After that, an advisor presented Dawn Academy and described it as a new world meant only for the chosen who trained there. Then his female colleague revealed the greatest reward of all, immortality itself, waiting for those who succeeded. The students were left stunned by the scale of that promise, and once the speech ended, he ordered them to get ready for a possible evaluation, making it clear this was no ordinary abduction. One after another, they stepped into a strange pod for a possible evaluation, but the first student's result was miserable, earning nothing more than a cold look from the evaluator. Another recruit performed a little better, but even that score was far from impressive. As more ordinary results kept appearing, the evaluator openly complained about how poor the new recruits were. At last, it was the boy's turn to enter the machine, his face giving away nothing. But the scan dragged on far longer than normal, and a drop of sweat ran down his temple. The evaluator caught the delay at once, and a grin slowly formed as he sensed that something about this kid was different. Finally, the system signaled completion, and the boy released a quiet breath of relief. Before the evaluator could stop him, curious to see whether the long scan had found some hidden talent, his eyes widened the moment the data appeared, showing a result that felt impossible. The system displayed Yahello's profile, and his stats turned out to be shockingly low in every category. His instructor could only stare at the total attribute score, a pitiful 9 points. Deeply disgusted, the man made it clear he had never seen numbers this bad in all his years. Branded as a failure of his generation, Yahello burned with anger, wishing they had simply sent him back home. Every trace of hope vanished from the instructor's face, and all of his expectations collapsed under those results. With one last dismissive remark, he turned and walked away, leaving the boy by himself in the dark. That insult stirred something in his memory, bringing back a painful chain of moments from everyone who had ever called him worthless. A bitter smile spread across his face as he remembered a life marked again and again by that same word. Even with a supposed new beginning in front of him, his fist tightened, because the label still refused to let him go. The instructor held out an ID plate and warned that taking the test would be nothing less than suicide. Then, making the choice for him, the man threw the plate aside and cast away his chances without hesitation. But in an instant, Yahello sprang forward and caught the golden plate in mid-air. Getting back to his feet, he He made it clear that numbers would not decide who he was because he would choose his own road. Entertained by that resistance, the man smirked, ready to watch reality break the boy's will. Nearby, a purple-haired woman heard the exchange and began to question the meaning of the word gifted. The instructor reacted with scorn, brushing off the truly gifted as lucky people born with greatness already waiting for them. He then faced the others and warned them to focus only on surviving the test. But a woman with long black hair stepped forward and challenged the Academy's grand promises. Adjusting her glasses, she demanded to know the price behind such impossible power. The instructor identified her as Gu Ziyu, the one with the highest stats, before explaining the currency used by the school. With a calm sign of understanding, she accepted the cruel truth of the world they had entered. Another student watched her in shock, realizing that she was the most promising recruit among them. The instructor then gave everyone directions on how to access their personal status screens. Following that command, Zio Lin focused on his golden ID plate and activated the system. His stats appeared on the screen along with a terrifying truth. Every death would take 10 years from his life. Panic broke out as the other students understood the real stakes, with their lifespans now tied to everything. But while the others cried out in fear, an unusual calm settled over Zio Lin's face. At that exact moment, a system alert flashed before his eyes, announcing that a hidden talent had been unlocked. He stood frozen in shock, unable to understand how someone treated as trash could possess something like that, and his thoughts nearly stopped from the impact of such an impossible twist. Zio Lin glanced around, wondering whether he was the only one hearing the system's message. His screen showed an unknown talent, one that had no match anywhere in the entire database. The details described a strong copy ability that also increased his learning efficiency twofold. Choosing to keep things simple, a firm look rose in his eyes, and with a faint grin, he gave his new power the name Top Student, confirming the choice as the system moved into its final evaluation. A moment later, the result appeared on the screen, an astonishing SS rank talent. The instructor then informed his colleagues that even his own authority had failed to detect that power, proving that Zio Lin truly possessed a hidden SS rank ability. A confident smile slowly formed on Zio Lin's face as he realized this could become his greatest advantage. Elsewhere, another student broke down over his short lifespan, terrified that one wrong move would kill him instantly, but the instructor simply struck him on the head and told him to use his brain. He coldly explained that with only 4 years left, any penalty would mean immediate death, then added that lifespan in this place functioned as currency for gaining power and resources. The frightened student was left completely shaken by that cruel truth, while the advisor explained that the academy offered strength and knowledge, a way to change their fate. He promised them wealth, a longer life, and even the possibility of reaching immortality itself. The purple-haired woman then questioned how far this new reality extended, asking if it applied everywhere, and the man confirmed that as long as they remained on Earth, this law would rule over them. Once the explanation ended, the instructor silenced the crowd and announced that the entrance test would begin at once. He ordered everyone to remain exactly where they were, then snapped his fingers to start the process. A system voice then declared the beginning of a teleportation countdown, preparing to move them all away. When the number 3 appeared, the students stood tense and ready, bracing themselves for whatever was coming. The count dropped to 2, and Zio Lin watched with a firm, focused expression. At 1, a vortex of purple energy swallowed the entire group and carried them away. Left alone inside the now empty hall, the instructor complained about his terrible luck with this year's recruits. Then his frustration twisted into a burst of wild laughter that echoed across the chamber, until another instructor arrived, called him Old Chin, and snapped him out of that strange state. The newcomer then smugly bragged that his class had received 2 gifted students, 1 A rank and 1 B rank. He pushed even further by mentioning a genius with more than 40 attribute points, which only made Chin even more irritated. This instructor scoffs at the rumor, insisting that SS talents are nothing more than a myth in the database. In a flash, the new recruits are transported deep into a foul-smelling goblin nest. Overwhelmed by the stench, Zio Lin gags and covers his mouth in disgust. Before him, a holographic screen appears, displaying the details of the upcoming test. It explains the entrance test, a required escape mission with optional quests to kill goblins. Each probationary student is then given a starter pack containing 1 random weapon. A key message appears, confirming that this test has no death penalty. When the other recruits hear that their lifespans will not be deducted, they celebrate in relief. Closing the screen, Zio Lin receives his weapon, a beginner staff with an F-rank skill. As he grips it, a new skill immediately unlocks, Basic Staff Mastery. The system of skills and EXP feels familiar right away, almost exactly like the games he plays. With that realization, a determined light appears in his eyes. He immediately channels dark purple energy into the staff's crystal, then slams the weapon into the ground and releases a powerful shockwave. The ground cracks apart under the force of the magical blast. He realizes that simply using the weapon grants XP, but his mana is too low to rely on spells. With his SS rank talent, he knows his skill growth will be twice as fast as everyone else's, but a sudden burst of pain reminds him of his physical limits. His terrible stats mean his mana pool is far too small to cast many spells. Nearby, another student unlocks a greatsword skill and plans to grind levels before starting the quest. Meanwhile, others realize the time limit exists to stop them from grinding forever. That gives Zeolin an idea. He needs a physical weapon so he can make better use of his talent's advantage. So he approaches Gu Yu, the top recruit, and asks to trade weapons with her. He studies the offer and reasons that skills must consume some kind of mental power or mana, concluding that the dagger suits her better, while the staff is a bad fit for him. He asks whether the trade is worth making. After accepting the exchange, he passes over the staff while warning about the need for proper aim, and in return he gets a beginner dagger, which immediately unlocks a new mastery skill. He quickly understands that if he wants to survive this test, his best option is to build a team. Wearing a pleasant smile, approaches Guzio Yu and asks to join forces with her. Then a large man carrying a huge sword steps in and makes the same offer. He brags about his strong stats and insists that he is the best partner she could choose. Calling the other guy nothing more than a pretty boy, Wang Dalin claims he is the safer choice if survival is the goal. Guzio Yu only looks back at him, her face cold and impossible to read. His offer is answered with silence, and the nearby students quietly laugh at how quickly he is shut down. The embarrassment soon turns into anger, and his face twists with open rage. Looking for someone to blame, he fixes a harsh glare on Zio Lin. The bully grabs the boy by the shirt and aggressively demands to know what he is looking at. He then throws insults at Zio Lin's terrible stats, treating him like worthless trash who cannot even understand weapons. But Zio Lin calmly answers that passing this test depends on more than raw strength alone. Furious at the reply, the brute tightens his grip and makes it clear that he intends to teach him a lesson. A slight grin appears on Zio Lin's face, untouched by the threat in front of him. He then calmly lets the bully know that chance is already gone. At that exact moment, a snarling goblin drops from above, landing right behind the distracted brute. A heavily built student barely manages to cut down a goblin and curses himself for being careless. Another goblin suddenly rushes in with its claws stretched forward, catching him completely unprepared. With an angry shout, he swings his massive blade in a desperate counterattack. Standing above the dead body, he admits that the surprise attack had nearly finished him off. Then he turns towards Zio Lin and accuses him of standing there just to enjoy the sight of him struggling. But his angry words stop at once when he notices dozens of shining eyes staring from the dark. In the next second, a full horde of goblins pours out from the tree line, ready to overwhelm them. Fear spreads through the new students as they scream at the sight of such impossible numbers. The air fills with cries of terror as the monsters launch their violent attack. A girl with purple hair swings her sword wildly, desperately trying to keep the creatures back. Nearby, another student is brutally cut across the chest by a goblin's claws. He drops to the ground and ends up completely surrounded by the snarling green monsters. Zio Lin blocks one attack, and the force of the clash confirms that this life-and-death situation is real. The awful smell and burning pain strike another student when a goblin grabs hold of her. Then Guziyu stands her ground, her staff crackling with strong purple lightning. A goblin's claw reaches him, and the feeling is disturbingly real to Zio Lin. All around him, the other recruits are being killed, forcing the truth onto everyone that this is no game. One student notices a safe area and shouts for the others to retreat into a nearby cave. Without wasting a moment, Zio Lin shoves another person aside and fights his way toward the shelter. He knows the cave can give them temporary safety, but a heavy feeling tells him that this is far from over. A system timer appears above them, confirming his fear that their protection is already counting down. Forcing himself to remain calm, he tightens his grip on the dagger, ready to study the desperate situation around him. He refuses to sit there and wait for death, and his determination grows stronger with every passing second. As he practices a swing, a system notice suddenly appears, awarding him experience for his dagger mastery. At that moment, he realizes that improving his weapon skill is now his only way to make up for his terrible stats. With only 2 minutes remaining, panic spreads through the group as the cave's protection moves closer to ending. The others cry out in despair. convinced the quest cannot be cleared against monsters that move so fast. Meanwhile, Guziyu sits calmly against the wall, watching the chaos with a face that reveals nothing. Her eyes settle on Xiaolin, who ignores the panic around him and keeps practicing his swings without stopping. He is already drenched in sweat and worn down, forcing his body past its limit before the timer reaches 0. Guziyu coldly tells Xiaolin that his grinding is meaningless, calculating that it would take him an hour to level up. Even with her reasoning, a firm look stays in his eyes, while sweat runs down his tired face. Impressed by her sharp mind, he listens as she confirms that reaching level 2 would indeed take about an hour. But a confident grin forms on his face as he remembers the hidden advantage he carries. His SS rank talent leaves him only 2 points away from raising his dagger mastery. He thanks her for the warning, then turns the conversation, asking what she has learned about the goblins. She seems slightly surprised that he had even noticed how carefully she had been observing the enemies outside. After a short and somewhat awkward exchange about gaming, they return to talking about how to survive. Then Xiaolin lays out his analysis. The goblins are weak, and their vital points are the head and the heart. Looking at the frightened survivors, he concludes that fear is the true enemy in this test. Once courage breaks, any chance of victory disappears with it and leaves behind nothing but despair. With only 2 minutes of protection remaining, Guziyu announces that it is time to move. But just then, the bully Wang Dalin steps in front of them and demands to know what they are planning. He tries to pull Guziyu to his side, brushing off Xiaolin as useless trash who is only holding her back. But she reveals that the real goal is not simply escaping, but finding and killing the Goblin King. The large student immediately mocks the idea, shouting that the Goblin King is part of an optional quest far beyond what they can handle. Xiaolin calmly explains that the existence of that quest suggests there must be some trigger, possibly connected to the number of goblins they kill. Guziyu agrees, and concludes that a kill count is the most likely condition for making the boss appear. With a sure smile, Xiaolin confirms her thought, convinced that reaching a certain number of kills will summon the king. Another student voices her fear, and questions why they should risk fighting a boss when even the smaller goblins are already deadly enough. Xiaolin answers that, with no death penalty involved, this is a high reward and zero risk chance they cannot afford to ignore. He argues with force that this is their best shot to gather credits and change their fate, urging them to take the chance. His words strike the others, and they begin to realize they may as well gamble, since the cave's protection will not last. The bully laughs off Xiaolin's plan and demands that everyone listen to him instead, using his higher starting attributes as proof. Guziyu shuts down his bragging without emotion, stating that his 32 points are only a little above average. Then she reveals her own overwhelming attribute score with a single number, 46. After that, she follows it with one simple and icy order for the bully to keep quiet. Frozen into silence, the brute can do nothing but stare while the other students witness his complete embarrassment. Xiaolin is left completely stunned by the reveal, realizing that her power is more than 5 times greater. His own strength now felt painfully small beside hers. Taking control, Guziyu announces that anyone who wants rewards must follow her lead if they want to succeed. Steps up and starts directing the group, ordering the brawny fighter to act as the frontline tank against the goblins. She then tells the archers to split into teams and cover the battle from the rear with ranged attacks. When her attention turns to Xiaolin, and she gives him a role in the new formation, he accepts without hesitation, already planning to finish off weakened enemies to make up for his poor stats. With the plan decided, the students get ready to leave the cave's safety and face the horde outside. The large tank charges into battle with a roar, swinging his greatsword wildly at the incoming monsters, while the archers raise their bows and prepare to fire from behind. Their arrows fly straight and hit several goblins, but the creatures keep rushing forward without slowing down. Still, one monster slips through the attack and jumps at the purple-haired archer with its claws extended. At the last moment, Xiaolin cuts in and blocks the strike, his blade already set for the kill, and one clean slash drops the goblin, giving him his first kill of the test. He explains that his method is to save energy and land only the final hit, and he puts that idea to work again by quickly finishing a second goblin with sharp timing. Then a third falls under his blade as he moves through the battlefield with unexpected ease, and a fourth kill follows, proving that his unusual method works with brutal efficiency. The brawny student mocks him at once, accusing Xiaolin of doing nothing but stealing kills when the monsters are already weak. But Guziyu sees what is really happening, as he predicts their movements and slips through their blind spots. A system notice appears and confirms that his basic dagger mastery has now reached level 2. He traces that accuracy back to 2 months of intense practice in a full immersion VR game. With a confident grin, he pulls up a holographic system screen and prepares for the next step. A system reward then unlocks a new skill called Heavy Strike, while purple energy begins to gather around him. Excited by the level up and the new skill, he realizes that only one goblin remains before the quest is complete. His dagger starts to glow with power as he pins down another goblin and gets ready to deliver the last hit. Then he drives the blade down and kills the final required monster, completing his first optional quest. With the quest finished, he rests the dagger on his shoulder, looking satisfied for the first time. But suddenly, the goblins fighting the other students begin to disappear into blue particles. The large student shouts in confusion, demanding to know what is going on. At that exact moment, a system broadcast announces that a hidden condition has been fulfilled and a boss has been activated. A huge shadow then drops from the sky and crashes into the nearby forest with enormous force. From the trees comes the Goblin King, a monstrous creature towering over the lone Zeolin. The huge Goblin King lets out a snarl, its glowing eyes making its overwhelming power clear to everyone nearby. In front of them stood the boss itself. Then it released a deafening roar that shook the ground beneath them, sending out a wave of green energy. The other students cried out in pain and grabbed their ears as the sound felt strong enough to tear them apart. Shaken by the blast, the purple-haired archer could do nothing but stare in fear and disbelief. But Zeolin and Guziu held their ground, studying the new threat with grim focus. Before them stood the dungeon boss, and its massive health bar confirmed their worst fear. The close view of the creature revealed glowing eyes that promised a harsh and deadly fight ahead. Zeolin quickly notices that every lesser goblin is gone, leaving only the king before them. Panic spreads through the group as the others see the impossibly long health bar and become sure that victory is out of reach. That fear causes one student to break completely, shouting that he is done before turning to run for his life, while Zeolin calls out to him. Zeolin tries to warn them about the goblin's clear weakness, their very narrow field of vision, but the beast's other senses are far more dangerous, with its sharp teeth exposed in a silent threat. Its hearing and sense of smell are extremely sharp, making any attempt at stealth almost useless. The fleeing students' panicked cries instantly pull the Goblin King's full attention toward him, proving Zeolin's point. Even the large Wang Dalin watches in horror, sweat running down his face as he understands the deadly mistake. Wang Dalin then tries to rally the others, shouting that their numbers should be enough to bring the monster down. With a roar, he jumps forward and brings his massive greatsword crashing toward the monster's head. But the Goblin King's eye shows no fear at all, only cold and measured amusement. It catches the blade with one hand as if it were nothing, stops the attack on the spot, and answers with a crushing punch that breaks the ground beneath them. The brute is thrown backward, screaming as he crashes into a rock wall, and his body breaks into blue particles while the other students watch in frozen horror. Panic explodes through the group as they realize their strongest fighter has been killed in a single hit, and screams rise telling everyone to run. One student lets out one last desperate cry while trying to escape the slaughter, only to end up trapped beneath the monster's huge falling foot. Lifting its giant club, the beast gets ready to smash the fleeing survivors, then sends another student flying with one savage swing. She hits the ground hard and looks up in terror as the monster prepares to finish her. But then a sudden blast of purple energy slams into the creature's arm and stops the attack. The Goblin King lowers its gaze to its smoking arm as its health bar finally appears for the first time. Frustration tightens Gu Xiaoyu's face when her magic attack barely misses the huge target. She immediately understands that attacking the limbs is pointless and that only its vital spots matter. Her original plan runs through her mind again, with the others holding the line while she attacked from a distance. But now that their formation has completely collapsed, that entire strategy is useless. Looking up at the monster's enormous leg, she sees how badly everything has fallen apart and admits to herself that her carefully built plan had been far too ideal for such a cruel reality. A sudden shout from Xiaolin pulls her out of those thoughts and warns her to run for her life. At the same time, he jumps forward, his glowing blade cutting in to block the king's crushing attack. The monster's eyes flare with anger, enraged by this sudden resistance. Then, with a furious roar, it slams its giant club down on the very spot where Xiaolin had just been standing. While catching his breath, Xiaolin confirms what he has figured out. The Goblin King always targets the one closest to it. He then calls to the archer and tells her to draw the monster's attention while attacking from a safer distance. Though unsure at first, the purple-haired archer forces herself to steady her nerves and agrees to follow his plan. Turning to Gu Xiaoyu next, he explains that her magic is the key to slowly wearing down the monster's health. With the new plan in motion, the archer raises her bow while Gu Xiaoyu gathers a large amount of magical energy. Gu Xiaoyu's blasts of power crash into the Goblin King, which responds by swinging its own demonic weapon. The monster's club smashes into the ground, but Gu Xiaoyu realizes that their combined attacks are actually working. Xiaolin shouts for her to keep going and pushes her to maintain the non-stop pressure. Driven into rage by the repeated attacks, the Goblin King releases a deafening roar full of fury. Its huge hands seize the energy spears buried in its chest as it prepares to strike back. A violent wave of green energy bursts from its body and destroys the magical projectiles. The blast throws the purple-haired girl backward, and Xiaolin reaches out in desperation to save her. But the Goblin King remains before them, injured yet still far from beaten. Now only Xiaolin and Gu Xiaoyu are left, standing alone against the monstrous boss, and she wonders whether they even have any chance with all the other students gone. Xiaolin quickly judges their position and asks how much mana she still has left for attacking. She answers grimly that she can manage no more than 2 additional shots. He tells her to aim for the head if she wants the most damage, but she admits the beast moves too fast for her to strike it properly. A confident grin appears on Xiaolin's face as he says that he will make the monster hold still for her. Then, in a flash of blue light, he activates his unique skill, Top Student. His unique ability immediately studies the boss's skill and reveals a powerful shockwave stun. Remembering how everyone once treated him like trash, he drives his foot into the ground with new strength. A system notice then confirms that he has copied the shockwave skill, marking this battlefield as his own. A sharp look fills his face as purple energy sparks from his eyes and he gets ready to act. As the Goblin King lifts its club to release another attack, Xiaolin rushes forward to face it head-on. He realizes that the boss's version needs a long setup, while the skill he copied can be used much faster. With his own shockwave now active, he prepares to block the monster's crushing move. He times everything perfectly and smashes his blade against the king's falling fist, trusting his theory that any skill can be interrupted with enough force. The monster staggers backward, and its powerful shockwave is completely shut down by that perfectly timed counter. Xiaolin's gamble pays off, proving his idea right and opening a key weakness in the monster's defense. While catching his breath, he tightens his grip on his sword, knowing the fight is still far from over. But the monster recovers quickly, and his copied skill now enters a 30-second cooldown, but a destructive blast of purple energy strikes its palm, leaving Xiaolin wide open. As the king gets interrupted to fire another deadly attack, Gu Xiaoyu is left stunned, realizing she has only 1 shot remaining as she tries to understand how he managed to stop the monster. The Goblin King stumbles backward, briefly shaken by Xiaolin's impossible interruption. A system notice reveals that he copied the boss's shockwave skill, which is now on a 16-second cooldown. As the beast regains itself, it lifts a giant boulder and traps Xiaolin, who instantly knows he cannot escape it fully. A wild grin spreads across his face as he decides on a reckless answer. Instead of trying to dodge, he plants himself in place and chooses to take the crushing attack head-on. Gu Xiaoyu cries out in horror as she watches the huge rock crash down on him. When the dust clears, he is still standing, injured but alive, proving that he somehow survived the direct hit. The monster roars again, but he already knows that his copied skill works only at very close range. If he wants the attack to land, he has to get dangerously near, so he rushes straight into the beast's personal space. He waits for the exact moment, his eyes locked on the system timer as it counts down. Then, with a furious shout, he releases his power the instant the skill's cooldown finally ends. The system confirms the activation of his copied skill shockwave. A violent burst of purple energy explodes from his blade and slams into the Goblin King at point-blank range. Tired but successful, he shouts for Gu Xiaoyu to fire her last and most important shot. Gu Xiaoyu releases one final and devastating blast of magic straight into the Goblin King's face. The monster's head bursts into digital particles, and its health bar disappears completely. A system notice confirms that the Goblin King has been killed, marking the completion of their second optional quest. Tired but victorious, Xiaolin looks down at Gu Xiaoyu, relieved that the battle is finally over. But the strain suddenly catches up to him, and he collapses while muttering about the safe zone quest, forcing her to catch him before he hits the ground. When she looks at the timer on the portal, dread settles over her as she realizes they are not going to make it back in time. Meanwhile, inside a high-tech briefing room, the academy instructors review the freshman test results. The head of admissions begins going over the overall performance and rankings for the batch, revealing that an incredible 15 students managed to reach an S rank this year. The announcement shocks the other instructors, since S rank requires clearing every quest and surviving, which leads some of them to brag about which classes have the most gifted students. But the admissions head makes it clear that there are 13 confirmed gifted students, the highest quality seen in 10 years. One instructor sinks into his chair and complains that his class is the only one without a single gifted student. Even so, the admissions head tells him that his class still managed to break 2 school records. He then reveals the first record. 2 non-gifted students from that class achieved S-rank ratings. In the same high-tech briefing room, an official continues discussing the entrance exam results and reveals that a new academy record has also been set for the lowest combined attributes ever recorded. Images of Xiaolin and Gu Xiaoyu appear, showing 2 complete opposites from the same class. At the same time, Xiaolin wakes up and is shocked to discover that he is alive and fully healed after the test. A system screen confirms his S-rank rating and rewards him with a huge amount of credits and points. His eyes move toward Gu Xiaoyu, and he realizes that she must have carried him to the safe zone after he collapsed. But then the purple-haired archer from the dungeon suddenly calls out to him with a cheerful wave. She thanks both of them again and again, admitting that she owes her rank score entirely to them. After explaining that she was killed by the boss, she asks whether they actually managed to defeat the king. Xiaolin confirms their victory with a confident grin, leaving her stunned and impressed, but another student nearby reacts with open scorn, clearly refusing to be impressed by what they did. He mocks the result as nothing more than blind luck and claims that Xiaolin only survived by clinging to Gu Xiaoyu. Ignoring the bitter student, Gu Xiaoyu walks over and calls out to Xiaolin herself, telling him that they need to speak alone about what happened during the battle, and the two of them move to a quiet corner to talk about what followed their impossible victory. Xiaolin thanks her for saving him, but she coolly describes it as a mutually useful choice made for the rewards, admitting that his interruption was the only reason she had been able to land the final and decisive strike. He is left stunned by her cold reasoning, realizing that she had measured every part of the fight. Gu Xiaoyu then asks how he managed to interrupt the boss, something that should have been impossible for him, but she also promises to keep his secret, earning only a quiet word of thanks from Xiaolin. Then she shifts the topic and suggests that they add each other as friends through the system's communication function, showing him how to open the interface with a simple mental command. Following her lead, both of them activate their built-in system interfaces with their minds. A holographic screen appears and shows his stats, and she asks for his student ID so she can send the request. And a moment later, a friend request from Gu Xiaoyu appears on his personal display. Without pausing, he reaches out and taps the accept button on the glowing screen. A system message then confirms that their new connection has been successfully created. Suddenly, a stern-looking instructor shouts an order for all E-rank students to report at once, dismissing the rest of the crowd and directing them to make their way toward the central field. His sharp eyes then settle directly on Xiaolin and Gu Xiaoyu, picking them out from everyone else. A blue-haired official calls Gu Xiaoyu away for a private talk, leaving Xiaolin to open a holographic map and plan his path to the field. He wonders whether she was called aside because of her E rank, or whether another reason exists. When he reaches the massive field, he finds a huge crowd of students already gathering there, and Gu Xiaoyu soon rejoins him, confirming that she did not reveal anything important during her discussion. Then, a sharp command cuts through the noise and orders everyone to clear the way. A commanding group of upperclassmen marches forward and forces the freshmen into formation. Their blue-haired leader stands before them, with a glowing crystal in hand and the air of someone used to authority, introducing himself with a confident grin as the president of the student council. The president announces that he will welcome them in place of the delayed principal, but before he can continue, a deafening roar from above suddenly tears through the air. The entire crowd gasps in shock and turns their eyes towards something descending from the sky. A gigantic purple dragon with glowing wings drops down over the academy grounds. Xiaolin stares in complete disbelief as he realizes that a real living dragon is directly above them, its fanged mouth opening in a terrifying roar while its glowing eyes seem to promise destruction. He freezes at the sight, unable to move under the crushing pressure of the dragon's presence. Gu Xiaoyu also stands locked in place, overcome by a deep fear that takes hold of her at once. The enormous purple dragon lands on the field with a white-haired man riding on its back, and the man casually apologizes for the dramatic entrance, saying that he had other matters to handle. That overwhelming figure is revealed to be the principal of Dawn Academy, who had nearly missed the ceremony, and one of the instructors approaches, with Riley remarking that the entrance was a little too dramatic. But the principal angrily rejects the idea that he was showing off, clearly irritated by the thought, and explains that he was only short on time, even going as far as to threaten to turn his dragon into a sofa. From the crowd, Xiaolin realizes that this is the very man capable of seeing his unique talent. The principal then addresses the students and praises the skill shown during the entrance exam, his gaze moving across the crowd as if he is judging each one in turn, until his eyes stop directly on Xiaolin, who flinches under that sudden and focused attention. With a tap of his staff, the principal spreads an amplification spell across the entire field. He prepares to begin his speech while acknowledging the strange and unpleasant way the students were summoned, then immediately shifts the blame to the admissions department for sending acceptance letters at such bizarre hours. The students listen as a new rule is established, limiting admissions to daytime only in order to avoid bad luck. An elderly instructor grows serious and gets ready to answer the two biggest questions on everyone's mind, and with his arms spread wide, he dramatically reveals their real purpose. They are colonizers. Their destination is planet Norma, a new world filled with powerful and monstrous beasts, where Dawn Academy exists for one goal alone: to train them into elite vanguard fighters for a land they are meant to battle over and eventually seize for humanity. The principal's voice carries through the entire stadium, loud and full of force. He tells the students that their ordinary lives ended the moment they opened their admission letters. According to him, what waits ahead is far greater than anything they knew before. Some of them may become battlefield commanders leading armies and claiming new lands, while others may grow into mighty magisters who uncover hidden truths and control the laws of nature. He even says that a few might climb high enough to shape the very rules of an entirely new world. With a dramatic gesture toward the dragon behind him, he goes on to promise strength, knowledge, power, and even the chance to live forever. He makes it clear that everything the new world can offer could one day be within their reach. Then he introduces a new rule. He explains that freshmen were always forbidden from entering the new world early, but this time things will be different. He announces that the top 3 students in the university term comprehensive exam will earn the right to go there before everyone else. That announcement causes an immediate reaction. The student council president steps forward, clearly unsettled, and begins to object on the grounds that the decision concerns the freshman's safety. But the principal does not allow him to continue. He shuts him down with a single sharp look. The president immediately backs off, sweat forming as he quickly corrects himself and admits that he spoke out of place. Satisfied with that, the principal ends the assembly on the spot. Xiaolin watches the entire exchange carefully. He notices how strong the president's reaction was, and quietly begins to suspect that the new rule may carry some hidden danger. Even so, he does not linger on that thought for long. He decides that his real focus should be using everything the academy offers to grow stronger. Just as he is about to leave, instructor Qin Chuan calls out and tells him to stay behind. Xiaolin turns back, and Qin explains that under academy rules, the top scorer in the entrance test automatically becomes the class monitor. Since Gu Xiaoya stepped down, the position now falls to him. Qin adds that being monitor comes with extra credits, better access to resources, and special benefits, things that could greatly help someone ranked at the bottom. He also explains that the role will be reassigned after 3 months, once the comprehensive exam is over. At that very moment, a holographic message appears. A message appears in front of Xiaolin, informing him that instructor Qin Chuan has appointed him as the acting class monitor of freshman year class 7. Chen tells him to review the extra manual sent by the smart brain before leaving. On the way to the dormitory, Xiaolin keeps thinking about what those privileges truly mean. At the reception desk, a sophomore explains the dorm rules, saying the doors close at 7 p.m. and open again at 6 a.m. She warns him that staying out overnight will cost him credits. Xiaolin nods and takes in the information, but the moment she checks his ID, her entire attitude changes. She looks surprised and excited when she realizes that he is a class monitor. When Xiaolin tries to play it down and explains that he is only an acting monitor, she brushes it aside and makes it clear that no ordinary student would hold that position. She introduces herself as Zhang Tingting and eagerly offers to help him collect supplies and choose a room. As she hands him a green freshman uniform, she casually mentions that sophomores wear blue, while speaking to him much more comfortably than before. She leads him to his room, which turns out to be a private one, something reserved only for class monitors. Regular freshmen have to share their rooms. Xiaolin looks around the space, clearly impressed by what he sees. Zhang Tingting reminds him not to lose his identity nameplate, explaining that it is required for entering rooms, buying items, and checking into classes. Before leaving, she adds him as a friend and tells him that he can ask her anything about school life. She waves as she heads off and reminds him to choose his courses carefully. Now by himself, Xiaolin begins to understand how much strength shapes status in this place. He wastes no time and decides to handle course selection immediately. He gives the command to open the course selection table, and a huge list appears in front of him. There are basic stat courses such as swordsmanship, sabermanship, boxing, archery, and meditation. Then there are secondary stat courses like taijutsu, perception, balance, focus, resilience, movement, parry, and dodge. On top of that, there are compulsory subjects covering the history, language, and geography of the normal world. The number of choices feels overwhelming at first, but Shaolin reminds himself to stay focused. He knows the required subjects are fixed, and he must choose one main combat course along with 3 secondary ones. He decides to rely on his scholar talent, knowing it can help cover for his weak stats. He thinks through the choices carefully. Since his talent increases his learning speed, he decides to build around that advantage. He chooses basic swordsmanship for its flexibility, basic taijutsu to improve his chances of surviving in battle, and basic meditation to strengthen his mental focus. Once he confirms his choices, a blue screen appears and lets him know that the selection is complete. The next day, Shaolin arrives at the swordsmanship training ground. He swings his sword at a wooden training post, putting force into every strike. A system message appears and shows that his swordsmanship experience has increased. A faint blue glow surrounds him as he keeps training, and his progress becomes far faster than before. With the help of his talent, Shaolin understands that the force of a strike comes from the waist rather than the wrist. Once that key point becomes clear to him, his movements grow faster, and his training gains much sharper focus. Before long, his swordsmanship reaches level 3, and he notices that he is improving at nearly twice the normal speed. Nearby, another student drops to the ground in total exhaustion, complaining that his arms cannot take any more. Watching all of this, the instructor Chung-na remarks that this year's freshmen are even worse than she expected. She then warns everyone that no one will be allowed to leave until reaching level 3 in swordsmanship. One student starts complaining that choosing her class was a mistake and says she is far too harsh. Others join in and point out that it usually takes at least 3 hours just to reach level 2. Through the noise, Shaolin calls out to Chung-na and gets her attention. He tells her that his swordsmanship has already reached level 3 and asks whether he can leave early. Hearing that, Chung-na looks directly at him, clearly unconvinced. She questions whether he is making a joke out of her. Inside the training arena, Chung-na calls Shaolin over and refers to him as that lucky guy with single-digit stats who supposedly rode his teammates' efforts to an S-rank evaluation. She tells him that if he wants to skip class, he should at least use a better excuse, making it obvious that she does not believe he reached level 3 that quickly. Shaolin stays calm and tells her that the data panel can confirm it, even suggesting that she check it herself. Chung-na lets out a dismissive laugh and says there is no need to look at boring data. With a faint grin, she decides to settle it in her own way. A red system warning suddenly appears, announcing that the substitute teacher, Chung-na, has activated high-level teaching permissions. Blue digital codes spread through the air, and the surroundings begin to twist and change. Another notice appears right after, informing everyone that the all-system training simulation arena is about to open and telling the students to prepare themselves. Shaolin looks around as the training ground fades away. In its place appears a dark and empty wasteland covered with piles of skulls and bones. Chung-na now stands there in dark armor that looks as if it were made from bones. She tells him that instead of staring at numbers, it makes more sense to test things in actual combat. A system message appears and welcomes them to the all-system combat simulation arena. They stand beside the remains of a giant skeletal creature, while Chung-na explains that the Academy removed the original rules of the normal world and poured huge resources into creating this training space. She steps closer and tells him that although he will not truly die there, everything he feels, including pain, will be completely real. She adds that opening this arena has already cost her a large amount of exchange points. Then, with a simple wave of her hand, armored skeleton soldiers begin to appear one after another. Skeleton soldiers begin climbing out of the ground. Chung-na tells the brat to prove his level 3 swordsmanship in actual combat, pointing out that these skeletons are about as strong as the goblins from the entrance exam. Then she sits on a throne made of bones and watches him with an amused smile. She tells him that if he manages to clear this dungeon, she will let him leave class early, not only today, but in the future as well. At that exact moment, a heavy blade swings toward Shaolin. He shifts aside just in time as a system interface appears and displays the mission details. The undead dungeon has opened and he can clear it either by surviving for 40 minutes or by defeating 20 skeleton soldiers. Shaolin presses his lips together and thinks that opening something like this just to test a freshman's level is far too extreme. Another notice appears and informs him that he has received a fine iron dagger with low physical attack power. He tightens his grip on the weapon, sweat appearing on his face as he understands his choices: either endure until time runs out or fight through the entire group. He chooses to fight. He rushes forward and slashes a skeleton across the neck. The system updates his progress and shows one enemy defeated out of 20. As he moves, he calculates the situation in his head. If he keeps aiming for weak points, each skeleton should take around 2 hits, which means about 40 clean strikes to finish them all. After preparing himself, he steps toward the middle of the group. From her bone throne, Ching Na watches closely. She had not expected this at all. She assumed that he would panic, apologize, and beg her to shut the whole thing down immediately. Instead, he charges straight into the fight. As she continues watching, she admits to herself that his movements are actually solid. His footwork, the way he uses force, and the angles of his attacks all look properly trained. That leaves a strong impression on her. She admits to herself that he is better than the others, but she also sees that his base stats are still very low. Then she realizes that he chose swordsmanship and meditation classes in order to improve those weak points. Even with those poor stats, Shaolin has already brought down 13 skeletons by himself. To Ching Na, that alone is already impressive. The timer shows 28 minutes remaining, but his stamina is starting to fade, and one of the skeletons manages to strike him in the back. Seeing that, Ching Na says it is enough and tells him to accept reality, adding that there is no way he can win like this. She tells him to give up and follow her instructions, but Shaolin remains standing and stays ready to continue. At that exact moment, a new skill called Heavy Slash activates in his system. With a single swing, he cuts down several skeletons at once, raising his total to 16. Chung Na reacts with surprise and wonders how he suddenly gained a skill like that. Shaolin keeps going. He uses the attack again and clears the rest of the enemies one after another until all 20 skeletons are defeated. When the final one falls, the challenge is complete. Breathing heavily, he looks toward Chung Na, who is still seated on her bone throne. With a tired smile, he tells her that he has completed the condition she set at the beginning of class. Hearing that, Chung Na starts to think that a freshman reaching S rank may not have been luck after all. Elsewhere, the scene shifts to the Academy's student council room. A green-haired girl hands the files on the S-rank and A-rank freshmen to the president. She mentions that there is something unusual he needs to examine, then points out that one freshman's class schedule is especially strange. The president reacts with surprise when he learns that Shaolin has enrolled in every class available. At the infirmary, the situation grows tense as Chung Na comes under heavy criticism for treating a freshman that way. She snaps back at the student president and calls him a midget, even though he is only trying to explain that her methods are too extreme. The teacher argues that she has to be stricter precisely because they are freshmen who need proper guidance. In the end, their clash reaches a deadlock, while the boy finally shows signs of waking up. He opens his eyes and quickly realizes that he is in the infirmary, with the student president confirming that the simulation does not restore stamina. That is why students still need care afterward. Since the boy passed out, he was brought here, but Shaolin already feels much better and should recover fully soon. With that settled, the president orders Chung Na to leave because he wants to speak with the boy in private. The woman is fierce and clearly annoyed, but she eventually follows the order and walks out. Right before leaving, she fires one last remark at Shaolin, confirming that she will keep her promise and let him leave early whenever he wants from now on. At the same time, she warns him that people who train martial arts with that level of intensity usually do not end well. Chung Na slams the door behind her, while Shaolin finds her more interesting than everyone else seems to think. Putting that aside, the president has something to explain and asks whether Shaolin read the part, saying he is not advised to take too many courses. Swordsmanship, movement, and taijutsu belong to the physical courses. Meditation, spells, and perception belong to the magical courses. Both systems offer different paths of growth, and dual cultivation may have benefits, but it is also exhausting, with each branch splitting deeper and deeper. By sophomore year, maintaining dual cultivation can cost nearly 7 times more energy for a student. Even knowing that, Shaolin understands the idea, comparing the structure to a tree where the higher it grows, the farther the branches spread apart. Both cultivation systems work that way, and even if the path is painfully hard, he is not willing to throw up his hands and quit. Besides, his skill is the key to making it work. That kind of confidence surprises the president, and before their talk can continue, he receives a message from the principal approving the boy's course selections. The president leaves after assuring him that a new schedule will be arranged to fit Shaolin properly. The strange part is that the principal's message arrives at such perfect timing that even Shaolin feels confused. He wonders whether the man is always watching him or whether it has something to do with his talent. Speaking of the principal, the scene shifts to his grand office where the man looks gloomy and disappointed. Dawn Academy's control system, a spiritual essence, asks what happened. The principal mocks the program for taking the form of an anime girl, but aside from that, he stresses that she is the Academy's core and that only a few people can access her. After spending 100 years with that old geezer, the program finds him painfully boring. She wonders why he is acting so bitter, especially when this batch is strong, and they even confirmed an SS rank student. The principal explains that an average person's stats sit at 10 points, the Academy average is 20, and Xiaolin sits at a depressing 9 points. He is even worse than ordinary. He only gained a special talent after admission, which means it should have been impossible for Xiaolin to receive a letter in the first place with such terrible stats. The computer program plays it smooth and suggests that maybe they made some kind of mistake, but that is exactly the real problem. The headmaster reveals that after checking the database, he found something shocking. There is absolutely no record of Xiaolin's admission. The principal explains that nearly 1,400 students enrolled this year, but one letter is missing, and something like that has never happened in the Academy's history. Since the virtual girl is supposed to be the main control program, he asks for her insight. The girl says that among the 1,360 letters, no errors were reported, so he demands to see Xiaolin's letter next. In response, she teasingly tells him that she will not cooperate because even he does not have the authority to view that specific letter. That answer hits the old geezer hard and nearly gives him a heart attack. He cannot believe that even with Academy permission, he still cannot view one single letter. The control program confirms it again and assures him that she is just as surprised. Accepting the loss without making more noise, the old man decides to leave it alone for now. Instead, he tells her to create a backup and encryption of the admission letters. That much she can do, so she begins the encryption process right away. Out of the 1,359 letters they have, every one of them is now fully encrypted, with only the principal or higher authority members able to view them. The only locked file is Xiaolin's, which cannot even be encrypted, confirming its maximum protection status. The girl figures out that the principal is trying to stop anyone from discovering that a letter is missing. The principal confirms it and says that he will return to the new world soon, and after he leaves, he does not want anyone acting behind his back to interfere with the boy's growth. As for the rest, he wants the program to manage the Academy's affairs. That conversation ends, and the very next day, the scene shifts to the cafeteria. There, a girl shouts in shock when she sees Xiaolin sitting in front of her, recognizing him as the kid who has become popular lately. She tells him that his luck is terrible because Changna is a complete maniac. Xiaolin understands that, but he wants to know whether only teachers can access the special simulation arena. To his interest, he learns that others can access it too if they have permission, especially class monitors. The class monitor can access several functions, including data, management permissions, application approvals, and even student use of the holographic field. For personal use, the monitor can submit his own application and use the field without needing approval. The process for submitting an application is shown to Xiaolin. All he has to do is activate student mode for the field, and the training simulation will begin. Xiaolin thanks his senior for the useful help, though she mocks him for not getting his hopes up, since freshmen are usually rejected. In a ridiculous turn, his request gets approved instantly, shocking her badly since the process normally takes 3 full weeks. The simulation mode is usually reserved for seniors, since it costs at least 500 points. If he fails, those points are wasted too. That makes the risk clear to Xiaolin, who currently has 800 points, so failing is not an option. At the same time, he remembers the principal's words, that the top 3 students will earn early access qualifications to the new world. Each monitor will also be re-elected after the exam, so this chance may not come again. To make things worse, Wang is already plotting his fall. Right now, Class 7's strongest names are Xiao Yue and Wang Dalin. If Wang becomes monitor, Xiaolin is finished for good and will lose access to the simulation field. That is why, no matter what, Xiaolin has to get stronger. After finishing his talk with the senior, he leaves, while she is left thinking that he works extremely hard, which explains why he became monitor in the first place. In the gym classroom, students are furious that someone with terrible stats managed to become class monitor. This is Liang Ziwei from Class 6, while Wang Dalin crushes a bottle and roars in anger at their counselor for making such a stupid choice. He insults Qin Quan, their teacher, saying that since he was once a weak student himself, it makes sense that he would care about the bottom ranks. Wang Dalin is clearly frustrated and still remembers the humiliation he suffered when Xiao Yue rejected him in front of everyone. His lackey Ziwei suggests that they can simply teach Shaolin a lesson now, instead of waiting 3 whole months. This guy has a connection with the senior, and because of that, he is already planning a scheme to hurt Shaolin. Meanwhile, Shaolin is pushing himself through brutal cardio training to raise his fitness. At the end of the session, he decides to return to the dorms, thinking that daily training will help him improve quickly. But the moment he grabs the door handle, it refuses to open, making it clear that it has been locked from the outside. Inside the training ground, sharp clicking sounds echoed as Shaolin kept trying the door handle over and over. After several attempts, he realized the truth. Someone had locked it from the outside. He figured whoever did it had not even checked whether anyone was still inside. Curfew was approaching quickly, and he started thinking he might actually be forced to spend the entire night in the gym. Then another click rang out, and the lights suddenly shut off. The whole place fell into darkness and silence. Shaolin let out a small, uneasy laugh and told himself it was only the scheduled lights-out time. Still, he could not stop himself from thinking that a school like this did not seem like the kind of place that needed to cut power at night. Outside, beneath a thin crescent moon, 2 students in formal uniforms walked across the academy grounds. Han Sun, from Year 2, Class 8, and a member of the disciplinary department, reported that he had confirmed a freshman acting class monitor was violating the rules by moving around after curfew. Chen Yu, the second-year head from Class 1, answered in a firm voice. He said that if a freshman acting class monitor openly ignored curfew, it had to be dealt with seriously as a warning to everyone else. He added that with the principal away and the student council president busy with larger matters, the disciplinary department had to keep order without making mistakes. As the acting head for the freshman year as well, he made it clear that he would not tolerate any carelessness regarding discipline. Han Sun gave a small nod and agreed, addressing him as Brother Yu. When they reached the training ground, Han Sun told Chen Yu that he would go in first and check the place. As he moved toward the entrance, a faint and calculating smile appeared on his face. He figured that since the target had just become acting class monitor, he must be carrying plenty of exchange points. To Han Sun, this looked like a perfect chance to gain something. He unlocked the door and stepped into the dark gym, but almost immediately stopped, letting out a quiet, confused sound. He looked around at the silent treadmills and weight equipment, wondering where the student had disappeared to. Chen Yu entered behind him and asked what was happening. Han Sun casually answered that he thought he had heard something, as if someone were hiding nearby. Meanwhile, Shaolin remained pressed tightly against the wall in the shadows, staying completely still while the 2 seniors searched the room. Inside the dark gym, Han Sun looked around in confusion and muttered that this made no sense. Chen Yu stood nearby with his arms crossed and pointed out that the door had been locked from the outside the entire time, so there was no way anyone could have been inside. He suggests that Han Sun probably just heard wrong. Han Sun wipes the sweat from his forehead and lets out a light, uneasy laugh, saying that might be true. Then he suggests they move on and continue their patrol. As the 2 of them turn to leave, Han Sun's face tightens with irritation as he silently wonders where the kid went. Behind them, Shaolin slips away unnoticed, disappearing into the darkness. Once he gets outside, Shaolin quickly moves behind a tree and releases a slow breath. He thinks about how close that was. If they had found him, he would definitely have lost points. Freshmen are not allowed outside at night at all. Keeping low, he starts going over the situation in his head. The timing feels wrong. He had been locked inside the training ground, and right after that, the disciplinary department arrived at that exact place. It feels far too convenient. He wonders whether someone set him up, or whether he is just overthinking it. He tilts his head up, looks at the night sky, and pauses. There are not 1 but 2 moons hanging above him. He remembers what the instructor said about the academy being modeled after the normal world, and he realizes that the new world must have 2 moons. The sight feels strange, but somehow captivating. Since returning to the training ground is not an option, Shaolin walks into the quiet, moonlit woods. For now, he decides that the most important thing is finding somewhere safe to stay until morning. Then, without warning, a massive shape appears in front of him. A dark snout releases a thick cloud of smoke, and a huge purple eye slowly opens. Shaolin freezes in place as a giant purple dragon appears, its scales reflecting the moonlight. He recognizes it immediately. It is the same dragon from the entrance ceremony. The creature begins to move, spreading its huge wings with a heavy sweep. It rises up and towers over him, its glowing eyes locked directly on Shaolin. Shaolin runs as fast as he can, forcing himself forward while urging himself not to stop. Giant blue trails of energy streak behind him as he moves. He glances back, sweat running down his face, hoping the dragon is not right behind him. He has no intention of becoming its late-night meal, so he keeps charging through the dark forest without slowing down. Ahead, he spots a building and immediately heads toward it. If he can get inside, he might be able to hide. He slips through a wooden gate and finally slows down, taking a moment to catch his breath. In his mind, he thinks he should be safe now. There was no way that Dragon would follow him into a place like this. Once he steadied his breathing, he began looking around, trying to understand where he had ended up. The place looked like a garden, but everything about it felt strange. The plants were huge and unnatural. Right beside him stood a cabbage so massive it rose above him, making him wonder whether it could even still be called a cabbage. As he walked farther in, he noticed a bush covered with glowing red fruits. A sweet smell filled the air, and he started wondering if they could be eaten. Then his attention moved to a large black bird nearby, something close to a rooster. As he stared at it, he could not stop himself from imagining a perfectly cooked, golden brown beggar's chicken. The thought made his mouth water a little as he noticed how plump it looked. The bird suddenly released a sharp cluck, its eye glowing faintly red as it locked onto him. Without warning, it launched into the air and charged straight at him. Shaolin quickly dodged as the bird opened its beak and spat out a huge stream of fire. He reacted in shock, unable to understand how a chicken could do something like that while barely avoiding the flames. Just as the bird flew past, a hand shot out and grabbed it firmly by the neck in midair, cutting off its noise at once. Shaolin looked up, still catching his breath, and saw a man in a white robe holding the struggling bird with ease. The man's face remained calm as he looked at him and asked who he was. He then questioned which class Shaolin belonged to, why he was wandering around at night instead of staying in his dorm, and what he was doing sneaking into his place and going after his chickens. At night, a stranger stood before Shaolin, clutching a black fowl. This meeting would alter Shaolin's perspective of the school significantly. Exhausted from the chase, Shaolin retreated and inquired about the man's identity. The man introduced himself as Song Jun Lane, Minister of Logistics, with an air of nonchalance, as if a novice trespassing at night were routine. His shabby robe contrasted sharply with his title, indicating power didn't always equate to neat attire. Song Jun Lane eyed Shaolin mockingly, scoffing at his rule-breaking after only 2 days. Meanwhile, he continued to grip the chicken tightly as it squawked pathetically. Shaolin hastily waved his hands to clarify that he hadn't intended to break the rules. He was merely fleeing from a giant dragon outside. He recounted being trapped in the training room, feeling ensnared in an impeccable trap with no escape. The discipline department members then pursued relentlessly, driving him into a corner. In the climax, a massive purple dragon breathed fire and chased him, a terrifying beast straight out of a nightmare. Upon hearing this, Song Jun Lane merely snorted, dismissing the legendary creature as a big lizard, claiming it wouldn't bother someone as weak as Shaolin. This comment struck at Shaolin's pride, leaving him stunned by the open contempt. It then dawned on him that the giant dragon had been an illusion or a clever ruse. Song Jun Lane revealed it as a trick by the discipline department to ensnare new students. In a system like this, manufacturing mistakes for subordinates was a swift method for the powerful to maintain control. Shaolin began to comprehend the extent of the trap he'd fallen into. Their ultimate goal was something called reward points. Song Jun Lane explained that reward points were the only currency that mattered here. They determined everything from equipment to cultivation resources, and even access to simulated training zones. The discipline department members particularly favored this trap. By creating violations, they forced students to spend their points to rectify them. Reward points weren't just money, but a crucial metric that governed every aspect of life within the school. Eager for promotions and entry into the new world, every student here desired it fervently. Upon hearing this, Song Jun Lane offered a knowing grin, implying that instead of losing all his points due to rules, paying a small fine would be wiser. Shaolin clenched his teeth in anger, believing Wang Delin had conspired with the discipline department to accuse him falsely. Song Jun Lane's expression then changed dramatically as he stepped closer and began listing Shaolin's offenses, breaking curfew and unauthorized entry into the logistics department. These 2 charges combined were enough to erase his few points. The sound of quick footsteps behind the gate echoed through the tense atmosphere, signaling the arrival of the patrol team in pursuit. Song Jun Lane casually presented a choice. Would Shaolin go out and face punishment, or accept an offer to be under his protection? In critical situations, freedom is often given up for safety. Shaolin recognized the man before him was no simpleton. He was manipulating the situation to benefit himself. Song Jun Lane smiled with satisfaction at Shaolin's quick response. Then, unexpectedly, he asked a question unrelated to the matter at hand. "Can you cook?" Shaolin was taken aback. He couldn't comprehend why survival skills had been replaced by cooking skills in this situation. A series of questions swirled in his mind. The sudden shift left him unprepared to respond. He remembered lounging around, watching cooking videos online while snacking. His practical experience was minimal. Song Junlane promised to handle the people outside for Shaolin on one condition. Shaolin had to prepare a dish he'd been craving for a long time, beggar's chicken. The black chicken in his hand seemed to sense its impending doom, crying out pitifully. The cruelty of power can sometimes be hidden under seemingly humorous requests, but its essence remains coercion. Shaolin asked nervously if he truly had to prepare that dish immediately. Song Junlane presented two options: go out and accept punishment or stay and cook. In exchange, he would erase all records of the violations, sparing Shaolin from losing his accumulated points. Shaolin sighed and agreed to make the chicken for him. Song Junlane narrowed his eyes and gave a self-satisfied smile. He emphasized that this was entirely Shaolin's voluntary decision. With no further words spoken, Shaolin began preparing the dish under the watchful eye of Song Junlane. Coercion, the peak of manipulation, involves making victims think they're choosing what's best for themselves. Shaolin forced a strained smile, silently praying he wouldn't accidentally burn down the entire garden. Song Junlane pointed towards the house, instructing Shaolin to hide inside quietly. Shaolin hurried off, not forgetting to leave a thank you note for the man who both saved and extorted him. Outside the gate, Chen Yu and his associates were already waiting, their faces showing the arrogance of those with enforcement power. Song Junlane strolled out casually, using a superior tone to greet Chen Yu from the discipline department. His indifferent demeanor was a weapon, a silent challenge to the others' rigid rules. Chen Yu adjusted his glasses and coldly explained that Shaolin had been acting strangely, so they were forced to inspect the garden immediately. The black chicken in Song Junlane's hands was now lifeless, creating a darkly ironic image of its fate. Song Junlane curled a lip and asked if they had found any truly convincing cause yet. He blocked the gate with nonchalance, mocking the discipline department for meddling in others' affairs while failing to handle their own. Han Sen growled back, asserting that the logistics department still fell under the academy's central management, and they had authority to patrol and control violations across the campus. Song Junlane's gaze turned icy. He directly called Chen Yu a low-level lackey and warned him not to interfere. He issued a stern warning that if they continued to meddle, he would report the unauthorized intrusion into the logistics department's territory directly to the principal. Chen Yu pushed his glasses up, clearly angered and accusing Song Junlane of using the principal's name to pressure others. Chen Yu publicly insulted Song Junlane in the middle of the night, claiming that everyone in the academy knew his abilities didn't even reach rank C, and that his position as minister was only due to shady connections. In a world that worshipped absolute strength, being labeled incompetent and riding on coattails was a direct attack. In honor's name and position within the system, Shaolin hid among bushes, stunned as Chen Yu displayed aggressive hostility towards Song Junlane, revealing open disdain. Shaolin fixed his gaze on Song Junlane as he retreated. A growing suspicion about this enigmatic stranger's true identity filled Shaolin. Thank you for your support with my video. May your life be filled with endless happiness and joy. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and comment to show your appreciation. I truly value your support. In the dimly lit area of the academy, Chen Yu and Song Junlang were still standing close. Shaolin was visibly worried. He wondered if these two would really come to blows here. Facing Chen Yu's fierce glare, Song Junlang gave an almost amused smile and calmly stated that even with connections, daring to cause trouble showed Chen Yu wasn't as smart as he believed. Seeing the association president humiliated, Han Sen immediately shouted out his disagreement. He argued that while Song Junlang might have good relations with the principal, he couldn't openly disregard academy rules. The disciplinary patrol was an official duty granted by the academy. No one had the right to hinder them from performing their tasks. The atmosphere grew extremely tense, just as a sudden ring came from Chen Yu's communicator. A voice call from the student council president appeared before everyone. Chen Yu's expression changed slightly, and he quickly connected the call. The holographic projection of the student council president appeared with a stern face, directly asking Chen Yu if he was causing trouble in the logistics department. Despite Chen Yu's quick explanation that he was only checking for unusual activity, the president coldly ordered him to return immediately and not bother Minister Song further. Chen Yu clenched his teeth out of anger. It had been difficult to find this opportunity to embarrass Song Junlang. Hansen angrily objected, saying the president was being too one-sided. Since a new student might still be in the area, they couldn't leave without finding him first. Hearing this, the student council president's gaze turned icy. He slowly reminded everyone that not only did the principal owe Minister Song a huge debt, but the entire academy did as well. The president reiterated that as long as what Song Junlang did didn't affect the academy's core interests, no one had the right to intervene. Upon hearing this, Chen Yu let out an indignant sigh. Han Sen, standing nearby, was also confused. He couldn't understand why his captain would give up so easily. Before leaving, Chen Yu left a warning for Minister Song to handle things properly. Song Junlang just smiled triumphantly and advised Chen Yu to be careful in his work. After the group departed, Shaolin finally dared to step out. He apologized for earlier events. I apologized for troubling Song Junlang, and he was quite curious about it. He couldn't figure out why the school and even the headmaster owed a student such a significant favor. Upon hearing the question, Song Junlang dismissed it, telling him not to overthink it. He explained that he and Chen Yu had disliked each other for a long time. Today, Chen Yu was just looking for trouble, so he didn't want to discuss school politics any further. Song Junlang quickly changed the subject. Excitedly, he invited Shaolin to make play-baked chicken together. Shaolin agreed but inquired about his fondness for that dish. Puzzled by why he liked it so much, Shaolin even warned that he couldn't guarantee how good it would taste. However, Song Junlang laughed and said, as long as the chicken was cooked well, he'd be satisfied. They then began preparing ingredients. They carefully wrapped the large chicken in multiple layers of leaves and covered it entirely with clay and dirt. In the quiet night, a campfire gradually flared up, casting a rosy glow that lit a corner of the garden. Sitting by the warm fire with a cup of hot tea, Shaolin felt relaxed for the first time since arriving at this strange school. 2 hours later, the outer layer of clay started to crack, releasing an enticing aroma that filled the air. Shaolin breathed a sigh of relief. It was his first attempt cooking, and the result seemed surprisingly successful. He smiled proudly, thinking he might have some talent in cooking as he gazed at the golden chicken before him. Song Junlang couldn't help but praise the dish. Just by smelling it, it was already extremely tempting. Song Junlang generously cut off a large piece to share with Shaolin. Seeing Shaolin just staring without eating, he curiously asked if Minister Song wasn't going to taste it himself. Song Junlang said that as an older student, one shouldn't compete for food with juniors. The first bite must be reserved for the chef. Shaolin nodded in agreement and admitted he hadn't eaten dinner yet. So, without being polite, he took a big bite right away. The moment the chicken touched his tongue, Shaolin tasted its tenderness and an exceptionally delicious flavor. A faint, milky aroma spread in his mouth. He'd never eaten anything so good. Watching Shaolin consume his meal enthusiastically, Song Junlang quietly wondered about its taste. He then asked if Shaolin's body was reacting differently. Hearing this unusual question, Shaolin felt somewhat perplexed. As he chewed the chicken, he blankly queried how his body could show any special signs from just one bite. Suddenly, Shaolin's pupils contracted. A sharp pain surged through him. Immediately, Shaolin doubled over, clutching his stomach as if a burning sensation was tormenting his insides. In agony, Shaolin saw Song Junlang standing calmly and asked if it hurt badly. He inquired whether there were any other sensations besides pain and urged Shaolin to endure for now. The cold look from Song Junlang made Shaolin realize he had been set up. This chicken was indeed problematic, which is why Song Junlang refused the first bite. Sweat poured down Shaolin's face like a shower as his consciousness began to blur, nearly causing him to faint. At that moment, a blazing golden energy enveloped his entire body. The pain spread through his bloodstream and reached every cell, making the veins in his neck bulge violently. Finally, he couldn't help but scream in despair as the burning sensation reached its peak, feeling like his body was about to explode in the silent night. In that intense agony, Shaolin cursed his fate inwardly. Despite the pain, he sensed a strange and unprecedented power surging from within him. Meanwhile, Song Junlang calmly took out a notebook to write notes on a research file titled Hybrid Iron-Crowned Chicken Number 3. He listed indices for gene activation potential and basic attribute enhancements, while muttering that despite many rounds of hybridization, the post-ingestion rejection reaction was still too strong, indicating the formula needed further refinement.